You think Gen X is quiet, cynical, and emotionally distant, but that wasn't a personality choice. It was a survival system built when no one was watching. Everyone talks about boomers. Everyone dissects millennials and Gen Z like they're psychological case studies. But Generation X, the people born between 1965 and 1980, just gets skipped. And that's the mistake, because Gen X psychology is the most misunderstood of any living generation. Not because they're complicated, but because they were trained not to explain themselves. They're your older coworkers who never complain, your parents who seem emotionally detached, the people who helped build the internet and then disappeared from the conversation. And here's the twist most people miss. Gen X didn't become invisible by accident. They were conditioned to be that way. To understand the Gen X mindset, you have to start where it was wired: childhood. The defining experience of Generation X wasn't family dinners or emotional check-ins. It was coming home to an empty house. In the 1970s and 80s, millions of kids became latchkey kids. No phones, no tracking apps, no way to call for help. You let yourself in, you made your own food, you waited. Psychologists describe this as a high-contingency environment, where actions had immediate consequences with no buffer. You messed up, you paid for it. You got hurt, you handled it. And that environment didn't just create independence, it trained the brain to assume no one was coming. This is the core of Gen X independence and also the root of their trauma. They didn't stop needing support, they just stopped expecting it. Over time, that survival strategy hardened into a personality. Solve your own problems, don't take up space, don't ask for help, handle it quietly. That's why Gen X is so often mistaken as emotionally cold. They aren't cold, they're compressed. They feel deeply, sometimes more deeply than other generations, but they were raised in a culture where emotions were treated like inconveniences. If you were sad, you were told to toughen up. If you were anxious, you were told to deal with it. If you cried, you were told you were being dramatic. So Gen X learned emotional minimalism. Say less, need less, show it through action, not words. They don't say, "I'm overwhelmed," they say, "I'm fine." They don't say, "I miss you," they show up when it matters. This emotional armor is also where Gen X cynicism comes from. They didn't grow up trusting institutions. They watched leaders lie. They watched companies promise loyalty and then hand out layoffs. They watched stability collapse again and again. So when psychologists call it defensive pessimism, Gen X calls it realism. They don't hope loudly. They don't trust hype. They respect competence, not titles, and they value authenticity because to them, the ugly truth feels safer than a beautiful lie. Cognitively, Gen X has an advantage no generation before or after them fully shares. They were raised in an analog world and matured into a digital one. They learned patience before speed, focus before notifications, problem-solving before search bars. They learned by effort, and effort creates deeper memory. That's why Gen X can fix things, adapt quickly, and stay calm when systems fail. They're psychologically bilingual. They can function without technology and master it when it's available. But that adaptability comes at a cost. Gen X never got to settle into one world. They've spent their entire lives switching modes, updating skills, carrying responsibility without applause. And now, in midlife, that pressure has compounded. Gen X is the sandwich generation, caring for aging parents while supporting children in an unstable economy, all while being expected to perform at work like nothing is happening. This creates a specific kind of burnout that doesn't look dramatic. It looks like endurance, it looks like competence, it looks like exhaustion no one notices. This is why Gen X is vulnerable to high-functioning depression. They keep going. They don't post breakdowns. They don't ask for help. They just absorb more weight. And this is where generational clashes get misunderstood. Gen Y and Gen Z externalize stress. Gen X internalizes it. To younger generations, Gen X feels blunt or detached. To Gen X, constant emotional broadcasting feels unsafe. Neither side is wrong, they're just operating under different survival rules. What's happening now is something quietly powerful. Many Gen Xers are reaching a pivot point, not a breakdown, a realization. They played the game they were told would work, and the payoff didn't match the cost, so they're choosing differently, leaving status roles, simplifying life, creating space, learning that independence doesn't have to mean isolation, and strength doesn't have to mean silence. Generation X isn't better than other generations. They're just shaped by a moment that no longer exists, a world where you disappeared, where you failed without an audience, where you solved problems without permission. They're the latchkey generation, the forgotten generation, the bridge holding everything together. And maybe the most Gen X thing of all is this: they don't care if anyone notices.